And we are actually here talking about some stuff today. Forget all the intro stuff. That's a long intro, but I feel like most people are like I am. You start the day and it's like, oh, there's a notification. Erskin's going to be on. Erskin is going live. Do I have time to check it? What do we do next? So I'll leave that long intro in there, but I just want to start with the Texas thing and just, bust the Texas flag out there and just come out, man. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was quite long. Big Head is back in the studio today. You couldn't see Big Head yesterday, but Big Head was there watching over the show, making sure that I keep my finger on the censorship button. But there's no crazy topics out there today. We're not going to get crazy. We're just going to keep it all moving forward, all positive, all optimistic. It is Guest Thursday, and we're going to get to that in just a few moments. Rick Lee James is coming on the show, and you're going to love it. Ruby and Scooby are in the background looking over my shoulder, making sure that, good Erskin stays good on this show. So I want to say good morning to everyone that's out there. We had an international audience that was joining us yesterday. Folks from Zimbabwe were jumping on here, and that's incredible. Hey, if you guys in Zimbabwe are still listening on Facebook and or YouTube Live, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for your participation and enjoyment of the show. Want to continue to reach out to international audience. I know there's some folks in India, so let's keep that at the top of our prayer list. I think Open Doors is called for a National Day of Prayer and fasting tomorrow for India, the country of India. And so let's keep that at the top of our prayer list. We know we've got some folks that are watching from there and very much in tune to what's going on. Supporters, actually, of the show, of Erskin Music in general as well. So for those of you who are watching on Twitch or listening on Twitch or playing video games in the background, I don't know what you guys are doing, but thank you guys for joining us on the Twitch platform as well. So the comment section is turned on. Would love to hear from you guys. If you're out there somewhere, Michigan, Tennessee, Texas, who knows? There's people all over the place who are tuning in and being a part of this show. And today is a special episode because on Thursdays, as you know, oh, wait, Big Head said you don't know. Not it. No, okay, that's right. Big Head said everybody out there doesn't already know that the format of the Erskin Music Show is Wednesday. It's just me doing a little commentary, balling out, doing my own things, talking about politics, race, and religion on my own, and then with you guys. And then on the Thursday show, we have a guest that comes on. It is usually somebody in the arts and entertainment industry, as you will see today. Our guest fits that description and somebody that you guys will glean a lot of insight from. Now, if you guys have never seen the show before, you guys will recognize there's a lot of commentary on this show. I do a lot of talking on this show, but it is the Erskin Music Show. And so if you've never heard my music before, we'll be plugging some of that in. At least the bottom of the screen there, they're scrolling. Is it this way? Yeah. Let's follow the bouncing ball. Erskin Music. So that's coming on as well. But yeah, unapologetically Christian talk show. Trying to think of all these descriptions, music / commentary. And so we're going to race forward in our show today because we got to get to our guest. Enough of me. That's Wednesday. Thursday, guest. Racing forward today to the devotion for today. Devotion today comes from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 16. Does anybody out there have that memorized already? Do you? Anyone? All right. I got it right here. I don't have it memorized. But it is a verse that I would probably memorize because it's a short one. I don't know if you're like me and you memorize all the short verses first and then get to the longer verses. But anyway, I don't know. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Our passage today comes from Table Talk Magazine. This is the September edition. And we are looking at doing good as a sacrifice, thinking about that in context. The sacrifice of bulls and goats and lambs and other animals have come to an end of the atoning work of Christ on the cross. Hebrews chapter 9, Hebrews chapter 10. However, as we have seen, that does not mean that Christians have no sacrifice to offer. Looking back on the great sacrifice of Christ, in thanksgiving, we are commanded to continually offer up the sacrifice of praise through Jesus. Hebrews 13:15. Today's passage reveals another sacrifice that we must offer, doing good and sharing that with others. Now, let me freestyle for just a second. All right, freestyling for just a second here. we're going to get to some quotations here by John Owens, but I want to make sure that everybody out there is aware of the fact that we have the opportunity. Here's an unvarnished opportunity through Christ, through the power of the gospel, to be an agent of transformation, in our culture, in our society, in the world, in the place where God has put us. Are we thinking about our lives in that regard? I've been on this thing for a couple of weeks now because I heard Ruslan say it on his show about there not being any JV Christians. And it really kind of struck me in a good place, because I think a lot of times people relegate people who are on platforms, who are on stages, like that's the varsity Christians. Those are the good guys. We're like good, but we're not like God's A team. We might be God's B team because we're doing some of the background things. And we shouldn't think about the sacrifice that we make, sacrifice of praise, what Christ has done, his atoning work, his electing love, his good works, which are prepared in advance in Ephesians chapter 2:10. We shouldn't think of that as a secondary work, like we're second class, I should say, because of any of those things, because we're not on a platform, because we don't sing songs, because we don't do any of those things. No, friend, if you are out there and you have the opportunity to breathe breath in your body and your lungs, and you have the Spirit of God coursing through you, and you have the Spirit of God, hope of the gospel in your heart, then those things what you are doing today really make a difference. And I want to encourage you in those things, and just continue to tell you to excel still more in those things and to press forward and do the things that God has called you to do. I'll finish up with a devotion today, reading from John Owen, my man, John Owen. He says that doing good at all times means being ready to do good, to follow through on this readiness, and to so do whatever we have the opportunity. Having an intention to do good is a commendable thing, but we must follow through as we are able. Let us look to the opportunities to do good to others, first to our fellow Christians, and then to our non-Christian neighbors. And that's our devotion for the day. Thank you. 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 Talent on loan from God. All right, we got to get our guest in here because you're going to love this. Let's race ahead. Next segment of the show. How can I describe a man who is an artist, a musician, a podcaster, a friend, fervent follower of Christ? Well, and who has a cool name in the music game. His name is Rick Lee James. And let's get his information. It is in the show notes here. Let's get Rick Lee James on the show. He's at the doorbell. Should we let him in? All right, he's coming in. Welcome, sir, to the Erskin Music Show.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know this. They should know this, but there's not a lot of people in my world that can keep up with everything that's going on. Erskin Music is so frenetic these days that we got interviews popping up all over the place. But you guys probably harken back to the Rick Lee James podcast interview that we had a few weeks ago, and would recognize that name from there. We had a wonderful time of just talking through what Erskin Music is, and life and ministry and purpose. And I thought, man, here's a dude that I want to talk to some more. So I invited you, I think even on that day, I was like, hey, I've got a show. I want you to come on my show. And you agreed to that. And we had Easter and some other things that were going on. So obviously need to get through that.
Yeah.
But we are here and the day has arrived. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it was thank you. Stirring round of applause. It was so much fun. You. That's right. It was so much fun having you on the Voices in My Head podcast, and just getting to know you that day. So what a great opportunity to be able to just visit with you today. I'm so excited to have the opportunity. I have since watched several episodes of your show, the Way Forward and the Erskin Music Show. So I've just been looking forward to have this opportunity.
Yeah. So the cool thing about it is I knew that you were kind of in the podcast streaming world, your show, but I didn't know you were as prolific as you are in music. That only came later as I started to do a little deep dive and a little snooping in on you. And it seems like you write a lot of hymn music and a lot of, kind of from that sacred place, rich lyrics and deep theology. Talk to us a little bit about your music stuff as well. And then you can talk to us about the Voices in My Head.
Sure. Well, thanks. Yeah, I've been writing music for several years, and I guess it was probably 5 years ago now. I was able to release an album in cooperation with Lifeway Worship that was called Hymns, Prayers, and Invitations, and it was really fun to do. It was really kind of a modern hymns album. It was a mix of traditional hymns that I had arranged with some modern hymns that I had written, and some songs that were like communion hymns, things like that. There was a couple of like John Wesley or Charles Wesley type hymns that were on there, like "And Can It Be" and things like that. There was some pretty sort of like modern musical settings to prayers like St. Patrick's Prayer, things like that were on there. And it was just so much fun to be able to do an album like that and just meet some really great people along the way. So that opened a lot of doors to be able to just play in a lot of churches and meet some really cool people along the way too. Keith Getty and people like that were real encouragers. And Keith almost put one of the songs from that album on one of his projects actually. And it was one of those, like, got to meet him and hang out with him a little bit and kind of form a friendship there. And so I don't know that I would call myself exclusively like a modern hymn writer or anything, but it was kind of a fun way to dive into that kind of writing, And so my church is kind of a mix of ages. So we really have tried to turn that corner from going from a real kind of older traditional hymn type church over the years to something that we can do several different styles. So it was kind of a fun challenge. And then a couple years ago, I released a newer album, which is a little bit more of an indie record, that I was invited to do a lost song of Rich Mullins called Thunder, that had never gotten published before. And so that ended up becoming the title of the album. And so that was title. It kind of just all worked out really in a neat way. So I was kind of able to put kind of my signature on a Rich Mullins song, who is, anybody in Christian music, we all kind of hold a special place for Rich Mullins, I think, in our hearts.
Yeah, so, you got some bonus points in the world of Christianity.
Yeah, well, for some people, it's kind of a scary thing too, because it's almost that sacred thing you don't want to touch, because some people hold Rich Mullins music so dear,
But all you can ever do is mess it up.
That's right.
And you're not Rich Mullins. Wait a minute.
That's right. I get that, and I get you're not Rick James. That's the other one that I get a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you get that one a lot, because I told some people yesterday that I was going to be interviewing Rick James on my show, and they were like, "What?"
Well, get this, that album Thunder that I did, that has that Rich Mullins song on it, I recorded it up in Buffalo, where Rick James is from. And they kept telling me in the studio when I was in Buffalo, New York, they said, "Hey, you were just destined to come here and have Rick James record in Buffalo." So it was so much fun, that whole experience. But that album was actually pretty much all original music except for that Rich Mullins song, and we had a couple of hymn type arrangements, but that one was a lot more just original, more indie type, singer songwriter type music. So I try to write a lot of different styles, and but I do tend to come back to writing for the church, and because I am on Sunday I am a song leader at my local congregation. I've been here.
Oh, fantastic.
About 20 years at my church in Ohio. So I'm a worship leader at heart. So for sure.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
All right. Well, I actually have two of them, believe it or not.
One all of your podcasts.
Oh, so many. Yeah. The one that you were on is Voices in My Head, and I've got the most episodes and have been doing that one the longest. Voices in My Head was originally an extension of the music that I do. And so it was originally just going to be music conversation. But the reason I named it Voices in My Head is because I'm interested in so many things, and I read a lot of books. I love movies, and I love just a wide variety of topics. So I ended up having just so many conversations and we now have over, I think 400. I think I just released 420 episodes now. I release every Wednesday. So we've had actors come on the show. I mean, you're an actor as well, and so we've had people like yourself. You am. But one of my favorite interviews was, outside of the regular realm that I do, was Stephen Tobolowsky, who he was in the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. He played the insurance salesman, and he came on.
That got a pretty prominent part. He kept showing up every day.
Yeah, he's been in so many like movies and TV shows, but he wrote a book about like his return to Judaism, and it's called My Adventures with God. And so we had a really neat conversation, just sort of about his journey of faith, or journey back to faith, and so that was fun. So we do conversations like that. We do conversations with people like yourself who are great musicians, and of course you do so many different things. You're
put on different hats.
Yeah, exactly.
Which hat are we wearing today?
Exactly.
It's probably just one hat. I just keep turning it to various sides just to see.
Different hat, different hairstyles. I'm so envious of your hair anyway. I'm envious of anyone who has hair. That's the main thing.
Whoa, there you go.
But so anyway, the show is just, I just have so many different interests. Last week we released an episode on immigration, actually, and I had a lady that came on that really talked through a lot about sort of our immigration process, and a lot of misunderstandings that we have about that, and some solutions.
Check that one out.
Yeah, it's a really good show, and actually got invited later today through her to be a part of a conversation that Russell Moore is doing with former President George W. Bush. That's going to be on. Yeah, it's going
to be on a call with George Bush.
Not just me and him, but it's through this sort of immigration table conversation.
Well, you didn't have to share that information. You could have just stopped with what you said before, and we would all been like,
just me and the president and Russell Moore hanging out today. That's all.
Closed circle group there, a little focus group. We need to just distill this down to the most information.
So all that is to say, we have a lot of varied conversations on that show, similar in the way you do. You have a lot of different things on your mind that are ministry related. So we're trying to do ministry in a lot of different ways.
I do.
So maybe, that's voices in my head. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we struck up such a kindred spirit so early. And that is because, as I'm listening and learning now even more about the platforms that you have and the ways that you go about doing ministry, there's just a lot of things that, kind of are in sync in our lives, and just kind of the entertainment, politics, religion, faith, application of faith, music, just all those different things, sort of come to the forefront. And I think, to be, I would say a well-balanced Christian, I would say more a kingdom-minded Christian.
Yeah.
Helps you to recognize that, there's no wasted space in our lives. There's no wasted opportunities. God is doing stuff, and it could, the music thing could take off, or it could be some other area of your life that God is working that begins to take off and reach people in a, significant way, or even any way. And that's always a neat thing when you begin to see that, you don't have to give up being who you are. Just be who you are in all of its fullness and give glory to Christ.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm grateful for these opportunities that, sometimes things happen. My other podcast, you want me to tell you about that one too?
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was the smoothest segue that I've ever. Sometimes things happen, like, my other podcast. Like,
well, talking about,
I was about to ask you about it, but go.
Talking about things that happen that you didn't expect. This literally was like one of those things that just kind of happened. Back around the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, there was I had started a Twitter account that is just Mr. Rogers quotes. That it's called at Mr. Rogers Say, because there wasn't enough letters on Twitter to do says, SAYS, so it just ended with say. It's even kind of cheesy when you think about it.
Time out.
Okay,
Before you go any farther in this story, what is the fascination with Mr. Rogers? Are you about to get to that, or
I'm gonna get to it?
okay?
Yeah,
I was gonna
I'm gonna
say,
get to
don't
it.
leave that part of
Okay.
it out there, because
Yeah, it's because it's actually it's really taken on like this other ministry life all on its own. I started this quote account because I had read this book called The Simple Faith of Mr. Rogers by Amy Hollingsworth, and I'd always heard he was a minister, and I watched Mr. Rogers as a kid, but I didn't remember much other than there were puppets and the trolley and things like that. Probably the things most people remember when you're
and a
children.
second coat and shoes.
Yeah, right, exactly. The sweater and shoes, the
Very
songs.
privileged, very privileged, Mr. Rogers.
Exactly. But I didn't remember a lot other than that. I remember the kindness, things like that everybody remembers about Fred Rogers. But I read that book well before I had started the Twitter account. And I just was amazed at what a person of faith he truly was. And like almost like a hero of the faith type person. Like he would wake up in the morning at like 5 a.m. every day for prayer and would spend an hour in prayer. And then he would go do his workout, which would be swimming laps in a pool. And he was friends with Henry Nouwen, and Henry Nouwen taught him this Taizé musical prayer that he would dive in singing this musical prayer, giving glory to God as he would dive into the pool in the morning.
Come on.
Yeah, like it's serious.
Rogers.
It's all part of this story. And then as he would get out of the pool, he would weigh in at a weight which he strived to stay at 143. And the number one to him was this code. It was a numerology thing, 143, 1 being I, 4 representing the word love, 3 meaning you. So he wanted his life to say, I love you, which, it's
Come
crazy.
on, Mr. Rogers. We're just trying to get on your agenda here. We're just trying to get on your level.
And he would walk through the studio door every day and he would say this prayer, Lord, let some word that is heard today be yours. And so every part of his life was so intentional in his discipleship about just being a Christ-like figure wherever he went, whatever he did. And he was so like quietly intentional about this. And I was just fascinated about him. And as we know, 2015 going into 16, everything was very tumultuous. Not like it is now. Everything's peaceful in the world and everybody loves each other.
We've crested that hill now.
Right, exactly. Thank goodness all the problems.
Smooth sailing now.
But I simply started a Twitter account to just put little quotes. I thought his quotes have been helping me. I'm just going to make little quotes of Mr. Rogers. I had a couple little quote books. And for whatever reason, people really resonated with that. And like we have like 69,000 followers now on that page. And I've gotten messages from people that you wouldn't believe, just people saying, you don't know how this has helped me today, or the way this is spoken. And it led to this other podcast called Welcome to the Neighborhood, a Mr. Rogers tribute podcast. And that one, like Sony Pictures reached out to me when the movies started coming out because we had such a following on there. And so they've been sending guests like that were associated with the film and people who
you had Tom Hanks on that
albums. Didn't have Tom Hanks, but like Tom Junot, who originally the movie was based around, and the story came out, like he came on and we got to talk about his whole story. And
the interviewer.
I was like, yeah, the interviewer. Okay, and so like things like that happen. And so literally it was like, I don't want to say by accident, it was like this providential thing. I felt like that God really kind of led through. And I've told people it's some of the best ministry I've ever done, and it's not even my ministry. I'm just like giving little quotes every day from Fred Rogers. And so that's this other podcast, which has way more listeners than Voices in My Head. And I only release it very sporadically, but it has this like international following now, which is really interesting. And so I've tried to just be faithful to what Fred Rogers did, not being overly preachy on that one, but just to simply kind of stick with the consistent message that he had, and try to, again, Lord, let some word that is heard today be yours as we go in with that one. So those are kind of my endeavors in the podcast, realm of things. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple people I need to say good morning to. Good morning to Janice. You want to say good morning to Janice?
Good
Hi,
morning.
Janice. Well, it's not a long time no see because you see us now. All right. And then we want to say good morning to Roy, who's in Kansas City, tuning in and taking part in this podcast. So there's some wonderful folks that are out there. And because of that Fred Rogers story, you get the dolphin sound, which is generally reserved for the greatest of comments and the greatest of guests. And so you've already achieved one dolphin in this show.
Awesome.
Let's just keep going and see what all we can get done in this episode. Hey, you're from Ohio, yes?
Not originally from there, but I've lived here almost 20 years now. So no. I mean, I've lived here long enough that I've lived here longer than anywhere else in my life. So yeah, I'm officially from Ohio now. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say you're definitely not from Texas.
No, I've never lived in Texas. I've been there a few times, but yeah.
Because you'd be eager to tell people, yes, I'm from Texas. Texas. There might even be a Texas flag in one of your shows. Who knows?
I got sunburnt in Texas one time. I remember that very well at a water park.
It's closer there in Texas. It's warm.
I know this. The stars are at night are big and bright. And
deep in the heart.
In the heart. So yeah.
That's good. You're a man who knows. You're kind of a Renaissance man. Today we have Rick Lee James, our very own Renaissance man, who has achieved dolphin status on this show because he knows a little bit, or maybe a lot of bit, about a lot of things, and just such a joyful guy. And his shows, as we're learning about opportunities to follow what it is that he's doing and engage on that level. And so thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of, you have future projects that are in the work. Every time, when we do interviews like this, even as we were talking, like there's the things that you've done in the past, there's the things that kind of establish the foundation of who you are in ministry and life and your work. But then beyond that, you've always got sort of a vision toward the future. And I was just writing this morning in my newsletter about keeping an eye toward the future and what that future looks like. What projects are you working on? What do you see on the horizon? What kind of, if you can share, you might be working with, I know you're working with George Bush today.
Yeah.
But you might be working at the Pentagon and some underground thing. Whatever you can share with us what's going on there.
Well, I can only tell so much information.
Yeah, I understand.
The Secret Service only allows me so much.
I know. Big Brother is watching and listening too. It could be a social dilemma.
I shouldn't have even mentioned that. It says
exactly.
It sounds so much more important
Let's
than
strike that from the show. Strike that. Edit button here.
Well, I actually have been working through the pandemic. I finally got my home recording studio set up again to actually start making some music here in my home. The
cool.
Last couple albums that I did were away. So the one I did with Lifeway a few years ago was actually in Nashville, near where you are. And then the one I did.
Not a bad place.
No, not at all. I miss Nashville. I used to live there. I went to college in Nashville and so many good friends and memories in that area. But then the last album I did was in Buffalo, as I said before. But I finally decided, especially with the pandemic, and it's been really about a year since I've been able to travel very much at all. I'm only just now starting to book some concerts and things again.
Okay.
Good. I've been able to actually set up a home recording studio again. So I actually Dropboxed you like the first song that I've gotten recorded yesterday, just in case you were interested in hearing it, because it's kind of fun to be able to like work on something that you've done at home, and I know there's all kinds of people doing their own home studio projects these days, but this was like a first one for me. I haven't,
well, I felt like that was new. So I debated, I was like, should I put this on the show? Cause like we could actually play the song, but I was like, if this hasn't come out yet, I don't know where copyrights and everything sit right now. So
yeah, no, I would, you know what, let's not do it yet, but it was just more of a like friend to friend to kind of like, cause I literally had just gotten it like a few minutes before back from being mastered. So it was just kind of a fun thing. So
sounds great, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. So that's just kind of a fun new endeavor. I think what I'm going to be doing in the coming days is I've never done things in the new way of making music, whereas you put out a single at a time. I've always done albums, and yet I know in kind of the Spotify age that we live in, it's more of a like put out a single, things like that. So I think what I'm going to try to do over this next year is focus less on the album right away and work on some things from home and try to work on songs I've already written that I haven't had a chance to maybe record yet, and polish up some old stuff that I've written too that I just need to focus in on, because this has been just such a hectic past year. We've only recently gotten our son back in like real school again, where I haven't been his like actual teacher at home and everything. So life's just been chaotic, and online church versus being back in real church again, and then doing everything's just kind of been up in the air for so long, and we're finally achieving some normalcy again.
That reminds me of President Biden, who was going and visiting some schools the other day, and there was I forget what grade the child was in, but he was asking about online learning and what that experience has been like, and they said it was miserable. They hated it. Very honest.
Yeah.
One of them said though that when you get sleepy and you're working home, you can just go take a nap.
Yeah, that's true.
It has been that year for everybody, just trying to figure things out. And I would say that for those that are watching this, this would not be a thing had there not been a pandemic, because I literally was sitting at home and I was thinking, I need to interact with people, but how do I do that? Well, I guess I'll just live stream. And then, the idea started coming into focus, and, the whole live stream thing started, becoming a thing for me, and the Erskin music show, and then guests coming on. And this whole experience was derived from pandemic.
It's such a good idea. And, in some ways it's helped us to see that like the borders are gone. In a lot of ways, even though we haven't been able to get together, it's really opened us up to some new creative opportunities we wouldn't have done before, and I think that's true on the local church level as well. And now that we are, I really do hope that now that we are like, and my church has been meeting together for a while, distanced, but we've also had like parking lot service where you could come and just tune in your radio. Plus we've also been streaming online and things. But now that we've been coming back together a lot more, since a lot of our people are getting vaccinated and feeling more comfortable coming back together and stuff, we're starting to see people we didn't see before that had found us through like online services. And so, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to reach people in new ways that we maybe had not been able to before and connect. Because now, like our church wasn't even online really before. I mean, we had a website, but we didn't have any sort of a streaming presence. So, I think everybody's kind of in a whole new world in that way. And so, who knows what the next thing is, where God might take us. But I'm kind of excited about the future and what it might hold. I think I feel like the borders are gone in so many ways, and even like relationships like we have right now. Like I might not have met you without having something like this, to do. And then now we have this friendship that's opened up, and I'm excited to see what even that may hold in the future. And I'm excited to see the good things that God's doing in your life, and the music you're making, and the conversations that you're having, and just hearing about the church that you've planted. I mean, it's just so much good stuff is happening. So.
Yeah, this is a uniquely rich and blessed time in our lives, in the sense that, I don't know if you've experienced this before, but I meet so many people in my travels that they just hate their job. Like, they're like, I can't wait till I get off. I can't wait till the weekend. I can't wait till I retire. I'm doing this just so I can get a paycheck, so that I can kind of cobble out some things that I want to do. And I'm like, man, I don't want to, cast aspersions against anybody, but man, what a wasted life. Like, I really, really enjoy doing what it is that I'm doing. I don't know if there's any financial derivative that I get from doing the Erskin Music Show, and yet I work, just as hard at the Erskin Music Show as anything else in life, because I absolutely love interacting with people in this format and this medium. And this has been sort of one of those times in life, especially in planning a church. There's so many ups and downs, but when the vision is clear and you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, it makes all of those things just grow strangely dim, because you're so focused on this is what God has for us. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are just doing stuff because, they were told to do, somebody else told them to do stuff. and they get down the road and it's like, I don't even really know if that's what I was supposed to be doing. The worst thing that I've ever seen is that there are some men that I talk to, and then they're just like, I just don't know what my purpose is in life. I just don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's a really sad thing to me, because, what do you get up for each day? How do you motivate yourself? How do you move forward? How do you have enjoyment in life? And I have, just from our other interview, but also in this interview, you're a very optimistic guy. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your optimism and your reasons for optimism. Where do you locate that, and how do you ground that in who you are and what it is that you do?
Oh man. Well, it probably just depends on the time of day when you catch me, I guess.
Before coffee or after coffee? Yeah.
That's right. You know what? Last night I was kind of ranting about something. I wasn't feeling super optimistic. I had seen something
the Democrats.
I had seen something on Twitter about something, and it kind of made me upset. And I was talking to my wife about that. But it's good to have people you can talk to and outlets like that. But
sure.
I think the hope of the gospel is a pretty optimistic thing, though, too. I hope that I'm becoming a disciple more all the time. I would like to think that I'm becoming more Christian in my walk every day, and I'm not sure I'm the best one to judge that. I think you'd have to. I mean, honestly, I think you have to ask.
Get them in the room. Ask questions about what's really going on here.
I think you have to ask the people that you minister to sometimes. How Christian am I? It's easy to be.
How Christian do you think I am?
Exactly.
Exactly. Being, I'm not really sure if you are a Christian. The 5 being, example of Christ and everything.
Yeah. But I'm seeing some good things in the midst of the things that discourage me. In some ways, I'm very discouraged. It's funny you said optimistic, because in some ways I feel more discouraged than I've ever been in my life about a lot of.
Unpack that.
Okay, I'll say that I feel discouraged about like the white evangelical church in a lot of ways, more than I've ever been in my life.
Note here that he said the white evangelical church, not the wide evangelical church.
That's right.
Just for clarification there.
I feel discouragement over a lot of what I'm seeing there, and maybe a lot of what I have been realizing over the last few years, and probably even in my own life, that I've awakened to in many ways, and things that I've seen about myself that I probably didn't like. Okay, you've got
time out.
Yeah.
Hey, there are some folks who are tuning in on this interview, and the comment section is turned on. I know there's about an 8-second delay, and so you keyboard warriors that are out there that are typing, sometimes it takes a little while for us to get the response, but the comment section is turned on. Make sure that you put those up there, direct those to whoever it is, but give this man some thanks. Give this man some love, man. Come on.
Yeah.
See, he's doing a great job today. We're about to unpack something. I don't know how far you want to go down that trail, but you started talking about white evangelicals, and there's people who were sleeping on this show that all of a sudden he done brought some liberals and stuff up on this show. It's not the Democrats, it's Rick James that we got to worry about. And it's Russell Moore, and they're hanging out with George Bush, and so they're just like thumbs down, thumbs down, thumbs down, thumbs down.
Well,
and Haterade is definitely a drink that people are buying in volumes these days. So I don't want you to get in trouble.
No, that's all right.
I just wanted to caveat. It's on you from here on out.
That's fine. No, I'm always in trouble with somebody. It seems like it's okay. It's no, that was actually leading me to my optimistic comment, though.
Oh, okay. Black evangelicals.
Well, that's part of it. I've found I found a lot of good fellowship through a group called the Multicultural Worship Leader Network too, and actually, you really should. They actually have a Facebook group called the Multicultural Worship Leader Network, and
where's Aaliyah when you need her?
I just finished a 4-week intensive with them last night, where we have been meeting on Wednesday nights and like for 2 hours at a time. And Nikki Lerner has been sort of our teacher in that. And it's been a wonderful thing that there was about 15 of us, really from all. I mean, I don't quite want to say it was. I don't want to quite say it was the Revelation 7 picture as we got together from multitudes that were countless, but because there's only 15 of us. But it was a really good fellowship, together, and a beginning of like a coming together and having some really good conversations and figuring out like what does it mean to strive long term to look like the church that we see in Scripture and to look like the church that we're heading for, and what does it mean to start moving away from a monocultural church where what we're seeing is like just only one kind of people group when we come together? What does it mean to start striving for in our congregations to really be heading towards that sort of Revelation 7 vision, where it talks about, I looked and there was this great multitude that no one could count from every nation and every tribe and all the peoples and languages standing before us. And yeah. I think we're being robbed of the richness of our worship because we are only seeing maybe one thing and one aspect of heaven. And
man,
so
what church do you go to?
What church do I go to?
Yeah, because you start talking like this in most churches, especially white evangelical churches, people start looking at you sideways.
Yeah.
What's this guy talking about here? No, he's going to upset the apple cart if you start changing my preferences here. I like my preferences, and I like how things are around here, and well, everybody's welcome, just not the ones who are different from me.
Yeah. Well, and we all like our preferences, don't we? And we all our preferences. We all have them, I think, on some level, except when you are the dominant culture, when you're the one that is that dominant one, every other culture is just an elective to you. Whereas when you're the minority culture, you don't feel that way. And so what I'm really realizing about myself is I have been in that dominant culture all along that's taken all the other ones for granted, know, and so I haven't reached out in the way that I should have, for all these years. And so I'm starting to see a little bit more of like what I'm seeing in the end of Revelation, where it talks about, the light of the nations is God is the light of the nations that they will walk by, and its gates will never be shut. This whole idea, the very end of Scripture had this picture of heaven, and heaven is so unthreatened that for all eternity, it's not even going to shut its gates. It's kind of an interesting thing. And that's in the Bible. You can look it up. It's Revelation 21.
This man is blowing stuff up, man. He's dropping the mic over here. He is blowing stuff up.
So I just think that, we're, again, I've said it before, but I think we're robbing ourselves of a really rich experience of the kingdom of God if we're not learning to reach out in such ways.
Yeah, man.
And take it and we're not there. My church is not there. We are about the whitest of white churches that's on the block, that you can find. But I personally am wanting to strive. I am trying to find new ways of leading, and hopefully finding new ways of fellowship and finding new ways to kind of break out of that mold. So I'm finding a lot of optimism there. I'm finding that those conversations are, I think, starting to be had, and in ways that I haven't had them before. I don't remember ever having conversations like this before, like in churches, in all my life. And I've been in church my whole life. So the fact that we're actually starting to have those conversations, even just beginning to have them in some places, I think is a good thing. And I hope that it'll continue and we'll start seeing some action happening. And so anyway, I'm seeing a lot of optimism there. Hopefully.
We haven't actually hung out at each other's dinner table, but I'm quite sure even your friends and associates would say you're actually a real Christian. That's amazing. Such a kind guy. You reminded me of something that you were saying a little bit earlier. I was at a festival one time, and I shall not name the name, but I was riding as the artist, was riding with the people who shuttle the artist from place to place, from stage to stage. And somebody was saying, look at this. This is a great festival because look at the diversity that's here. And this is a picture of heaven. I thought to myself, two black people here. Like, I don't know what you mean by this is a picture of heaven. There's all white people and two black people, and I'm not quite sure what you meant by that, but I think you were trying to be very positive about it. But as I'm looking around, it's just that matter of perspective that you were talking about that sometimes gets a little bit skewed when you're in the majority culture and you see any type of diversity. You think, oh yeah, this is what heaven's going to be like. It's going to be mostly white people because that's the ones who get saved, and just a few scatterings of some other people that are there. And and so I kind of pushed back a little bit in a kind way and made him think about that, like, oh, and just that little hesitation there on my part calls him to think, oh yeah, heaven's going to be even greater than what I'm currently thinking heaven might be. And this is not not even a picture of what heaven is ultimately going to be like. And so that was something that you reminded me of when you were talking about kind of some of the things that you had been learning. And then also, man, I think it's great that you are embarking on this journey. Man, I think it gets a little convoluted sometimes, though, doesn't it? Because there's so many people who are out there, and this might be part of your frustration. I know it's, a curiosity of mine is that there's a lot of white evangelical voices that are out there that are really coming at critical race theory. They're coming at identity politics. And I'm not the tone police here, but I would just, if I could offer a suggestion to some of my white brothers who are out there who are just really on this kick of like Black Lives Matter, trash, anybody who believes these kind of things, trash, like that kind of tone makes it almost appear as though you're racist. Like I've heard this comment recently, the people have told me like what the media is doing by talking about racism and how much racism there is and calling everything in America racist and talking about how racist we are as a society is creating even more racism. And to a certain degree, I completely agree. Not everything in our society is racism and not everything in our society is race laden. But in our society, like if somebody talking about racism and calling you a racist makes you then hate me more, then you already were a racist. You just got exposed. And so those are some of the things that I have noticed is like the white evangelical voices that are just like, nah, we gotta stamp this out. We gotta identify what's going on. Critical race theory. We gotta come against that. Like I'm against that too, but my tone is not quite the same thing. Like I don't want my tone to come across that like I'm racist. And I feel like for a lot of white evangelicals, the tone. Now I guess I am the tone police today. Their tone is that like we don't like all this blackness that's coming out, all this diversity talk that's coming out, all these conversations that are coming out. And to me, it feels like they're understanding the loss of power. They're understanding the loss of their perspective as being the dominant perspective now in culture. And it's like, how do we get that power back? How do we wrest this from our society? And how do we revolt against any Christian who doesn't take our view of what race and reality should be? And I'm like, I don't know, because you already talked about it, Rick. The walls have come down. And I try to get people to recognize this on this show. Like somebody was asking me about a record label, and I was like, what's that? Like, why would you sign a record deal when you would lose all of this leverage to be able to do the ministry that God has called you to? If that's what God has called you to, that's fine. But you got to really think that through before you dive into that, because there's so many networks. Like you're telling me about some more that I need to interact with. And there's so many opportunities that are out there. It's like, why would I limit myself with this one little area over here? So anyway, you can respond to any of that. None of that.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think what you're saying is right on. I don't really have much to add to it. I just, I think you're right. So
I'm like, okay, that was too long. I need to let
no.
It's the Rick show. I'm going off of this thing. See ya. Take it.
Uh-oh, he disappeared. So
I gave you the show. It's your show.
You just scared me to death. Now it's my show. So hey, it's the Erskin music show, but I'm not Erskin, so I feel really kind of out of place right now. But I'm grateful for the opportunity.
I'll come back.
Be here. Thank goodness, because man, I just feel like when a late night person has a guest host on or something, and it just doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, man, a powerful interview. I only want to take up a couple more minutes of your time.
Oh,
sort of as we round the corner here, and talk through life. You're kind of a Renaissance man. What books, what media, what's really exciting you these days? I found out about Mr. Rogers, so I'm gonna have to go check that out and have to do some reading on Fred Rogers myself.
yeah. Well, you know what? Speaking of like media, if you really are interested, kind of a good intro is that documentary that they did about Fred Rogers just a few years ago. They did a movie with Tom Hanks, but the movie is okay, I think, but it's not nearly as good as the documentary.
I watched the Tom Hanks movie.
It's all right. It's not, it's not where I would send people first. I for some reason the documentary I've completely forgotten the name of it right now.
Aaliyah, are you listening to the show? Help us out.
Why am I forgetting it? All my Twitter people would just grab me right now and slap me across the face, but I can't think of what it's called. Anyway, you'll find it.
People, when you do this and you get in the bright lights, I've forgotten family members' names before.
Yeah,
so quite all right.
I can't even remember my own name right now.
Lady who gave birth to me. I'm not for sure what her name is, but yeah, she's out there somewhere. Thank you so much.
I think it's called "Won't You Be My Neighbor" is the documentary, but that's a really good one, and that kind of goes into all
Netflix.
I don't know exactly where it's playing right now, but I'm sure it's available. You could probably even go to your local library and just check it out if you were looking for something like that. Yeah. So I've been, now that you put me on the spot, I can't even remember what books I've been reading. I just finished a book from a friend of mine that was about finding hope in the Return of the King, actually, the J.R.R. Tolkien book. And we just had an interview with him that comes out next week on the podcast. And that was really good. Yeah. And another friend of mine, Sean Congleton, who lives here in Springfield, just wrote a really amazing book. I'll give a plug for that. It's called Never Settled. And it's a memoir about his life and surviving abuse and surviving and thriving actually and finding the Lord and just it's a really amazing story. So Never Settled by Sean Congleton is a really good book. I'll give a recommendation for. Other than that, yeah, I just I recommend Erskin's music. It's you listen to that. You put me on you put me on the spot, and I'm not thinking of things right now that I'm reading and thinking of. I've been doing so much prep for the podcast lately, but the Erskin Music Show, you just can't go wrong with that. So I'll recommend that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of fun. We do a weekend show called The Way Forward as well with myself and another pastor from Illinois. And, we get a lot of commentary on that show because generally
I've watched it.
Yeah. It can get heated sometimes on that show, especially with some of the comments that are going on. I got a long letter from somebody on a police force when we did the Defund the Police episode. I'm not an advocate of defunding police. I think the nomenclature, all of that is just horrific. But that is a subject matter that people talk about. So we talk about those as well. And it's interesting how, when people step into your area of life, how quickly that can get volatile.
Yeah.
So I think we need to give each other some time and some space to be able to articulate ourselves, to really understand what's being said, what's not being said, and not infer too much into, oh, well, he didn't say this, or, oh, he said that, but he should have said it this way. Like, I think there's a lot of that goes on, and we kind of misunderstand. We miscommunicate, I think, a lot in our culture. And so we have to be very clear. I'm not saying defund the police. I'm not saying that I have to be demonstrative almost about those things.
It's a hard time to have conversations about lots of things because it quickly devolves into shouting matches, I think, at times. And that makes it really hard when we aren't willing to listen to the perspective of other people, even people I think that we might have some real disagreements with. If we don't at least give them a chance to be heard, most people probably you do need to listen and let them be heard. There's a few that maybe There's a few that maybe we shouldn't let them be heard entirely, at least not on a microphone. But in our conversations, I think it's good to at least, hear each other out, and it can quickly devolve. It is a difficult time, but hopefully we can let love lead in our conversations, and allow Christ to lead us in those times, and
Sure.
And realize that, we are, especially as Christians, a part of this kingdom of God. That you referenced something, by the way, on this show yesterday, that the gates of hell would not prevail.
Oh yeah,
against the
Jesus.
church. And I was thinking, yeah, and I was thinking about that again too, because I'm working on a sermon that has to do with that, and I was thinking about, we often think about that as being like hell coming against us, but they're not going to prevail. But when you read that, like, no, that's actually, like, hell is on the defensive there, because it's the gates of hell that are being smashed down, and hell has no defense, and then you pair that with, the Revelation passage that I had referred to earlier, where the gates are never shut. And it's like, heaven is so unpanicked about, this whole situation, that God's just decided, you know what, not only are, we're not going to shut the gate, we're going to leave it open. And I'm so unpanicked about hell. The gates are never going to be, we're going to just overcome the gates. and so it's okay. What's the worst that can happen? We're just going to listen. We're going to allow them to speak, and then we're going to speak in love in return, and allow Christ to speak out. And back to Fred Rogers, one last reference: let some word that is heard be yours, Lord, and let the Holy Spirit be the one that speaks and does the interpreting, hopefully, into those hearts and lives.
Fred Rogers just took over our show. We're all off the show now, Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
I like that. Josh says, yes, amen. The church is on the offensive for the kingdom of God. So, yeah, that definitely resonates. That it's
good word, Josh.
Heart today. What a good episode, man. Anything you want to say that you haven't said already? I tried to get you in trouble. I tried to get you out of trouble. So, any clarifications? I want to disclaim this whole episode, or anything.
This has just been so much fun. Do you mind if I just make a quick plug for my website if people want to see it? And just
do it.
If you go to rickleejames.com, just add my middle name Lee, rickleejames.com, and you can. I brought visual aids. This is my album Hymns, Prayers, and Invitations. You can see that. That's music you can find there, and this is my album Thunder. It's hard to see what's going on the camera, but you can find music like that and actually hear it on the website. There's a Spotify link and things like that. So I'd be honored if you wanted to come and give my music a listen. And there's links to YouTube and articles and stuff from CCM magazine and things like that on there. So I'd love to get to know more of you. And if you want to come give my podcast a listen, I would be honored to. So thank you for taking some time to listen today. And thank you, Erskin. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been so much fun. And I can't wait to have you back on Voices in My Head again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. I'll come on anytime. That'll be a great day in the neighborhood.
Yes.
But I got the information down there scrolling at the bottom of the screen. rickleejames.com. Check out his website. Check out his information, music, media, podcasting, more. He's in this world for good, and he's doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much for your interactions today. We will talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
God bless. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. That was Rick Lee James. The Rick Lee James. Come on. He started a name for his own self on this podcast today, because he broke the mold. He came out, thought he was going this way. He went that way, thought he was going that way. He came back this way. Man, put that Fred Rogers up in here, and then just started talking about some things that he's learning. And so a true Renaissance man. So check out his stuff. Check out his podcast. You will not be disappointed. Always seems to have such a kindness about him, the way that he speaks. such a patience in the way that he does his interviews. If you get a chance to hearken back to our interview that we did in Voices in My Head, you'll see that even the way that he asks a question, even the way that he presents himself. And so a lot of good conversations, a lot of great dialogue that's going on these days. And I want you all, let's see how people are watching. I want all you, and you. There's at least 3 people that are watching right now, right this moment, to be part of those catalysts that continue these conversations and continue to encourage people all the more as we see the day approaching. Well, it is the Erskin Music Show, and so I am going to play some music here for just a moment before we get off of here. Or should I do a service announcement? Do a PSA here for Erskin Music. I'll just do my subscribe, and then we'll get out for today. I got to get on the road. I'm headed to Oklahoma here in just a few moments, so the car is almost packed. And as soon as I take down all this audio gear, put it in the car, we are on the road. And so I will just give us the subscribe button down here at the bottom, and I'll let you guys check this out, and then we'll get out of here for today. Thank you, guys. Comment section is still turned on until the end of the show, but you can go back and you can watch this at any time, delayed and in review on YouTube, Facebook Live, and I think also on Twitch. So here's our subscription button. We're about to sign off for the Erskin Music Show. I've enjoyed you guys today, and I hope you guys enjoyed our guest, Rick Lee James. We'll be back on Saturday for the Way Forward broadcast. If you missed the Way Forward broadcast or any of these broadcasts, you can go and you can see them on YouTube, Facebook, and I believe also on Twitch. It's been the Erskin Music Show. God bless.